what is goal setting? Like, what does that mean to you?
Gosh, I mean, it means lots of different things. And ultimately, to me, when I'm doing it from a professional perspective, it is about helping others find fulfillment in what they are doing, and however that might look. But when we talk about kind of goal setting in general, I mean, it encompasses so much, so that it can be your dreams, your hopes. It might be very specific plans. I need to do this. It could be career, it could be life. Goal setting is also often about kind of motivation. How do we do this thing that I want to do? And very often it's about kind of success. How do I do this thing that I think is going to be fantastic or useful or helpful in some way to me? Maybe make me more successful. And again, that's another conversation of like, what does success look like? And it's very different to everybody. So at the heart of it, goal setting is about helping others find that fulfillment, or finding fulfillment in what we're doing. But then it branches off into all sorts of different areas, which can get super weird.
Why is goal setting important?
It's important because it's about our well-being. I think it is a part of our well-being. We want to achieve things. I think the human brain is wired to, even especially now with, the dopamine wire of like achieving checklists or watching stuff and getting that instant gratification. So goal setting is important to us because it ultimately makes us feel good to achieve things. It makes us feel good to move forwards, to not feel stuck and blocked, to feel powerful or successful, or like we are maybe in control of something, or have an idea that we are acting out. That all feels good, and it fills that need. It fills that well-being side of the brain that is necessary. I mean, if we go back to kind of the biology of goal setting and we think about kind of, where did it come from? Humans are a collaborative species. Like we absolutely rely on others to work together, and a lot of our history is about achieving goals. It's about working together to achieve a thing, and that comes from a very basic need for survival, right? If we didn't work together collaboratively to find food and store food for winter, we would die. So that's at its very heart, it's a survival need. But that's changed, I guess, now in terms of, what do we need now? We still need that feeling, I think, of achievement. It just shows up in different ways. And I guess for a lot of Western society, a lot of those needs, those survival needs can be met. So I guess the question is like, how is goal setting evolved now? And how does it show up? We're no longer having to hunt the bear or the food.
Whatever, yeah.
We're now in a boardroom or in an office location trying to figure out, what does that goal look like? How does that feel good to achieve? And what is that? So it's evolved from that need to survive. Why is it important? Because it's important for the brain to feel like it's moving forward. I just think that's definitely for me. That makes a big difference in my life to know that I hate feeling stuck. Goal setting gives me this kind of structure, I guess, that allows me to celebrate both myself, but those around me, and get that feeling of satisfaction that life has meaning and purpose.
I hadn't thought about this before as you were describing that and thinking about that evolution of goal setting from, we all use this as a survival function collectively. Now we may be able to take certain elements of survival more for granted. We just, food for many people has been relatively available. If you're listening to this podcast, you're in the Western world, you probably have easy access to food, and you might have had that your whole life, especially when you compare it to people 6,000 years ago or something. But that idea of the evolution of goal setting, the thing that came to mind for me is we are in a society where there's a lot of people out there, and I mean, game dev can do this, although I think there's others, people can spend hours on TikTok getting little dopamine hits. And I almost was thinking about it as the evolution of goal setting is the dopamine hit is no longer a sufficient goal, because it's too easy to get so many dopamine hits by doom scrolling or, just jumping between distraction activities, like watch the show, watch the movie, play the game, listen to music. Yeah. And the evolution of goal setting is, okay, we have to actually, the goal setting gets you past that. It gets you past those short-term hits into something of like, you could do something more meaningful than this. You could do something greater. And goals are a way to try to articulate that, or to try to like get you, out of bed in the morning, let's say, like, okay, let's get up, let's get moving. I don't want to be stuck. We probably all know someone in our life who's, somewhere between the ages of 25 and 45, let's say, and it just seems like their life is just the same yesterday as it was the day before that, as it was the day before that. And there's not, and again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but for some of them, like, I think they want more, but they're in a pleasant loop of like, I'm surviving. And the goal would be a way to go like, let me get outside of this pleasant survival loop and perhaps become something more or achieve something greater. That was very long, but that was just, what came to mind.
No, I totally agree. I think what you're getting at though is you're exploring how complicated kind of the theme of goal setting is, because what used to be, I guess, something that was more collaborative for survival has definitely kind of evolved, and we now have this very kind of individualistic notion of goal setting. Again, I mentioned earlier that like this weird theme of success has now crept in, and success has evolved to mean lots of different things in today's society, and that can then, I think, interfere or be part of it. And there's nothing wrong with setting individual goals, but there's definitely there's definitely a difference, I think, in when we set, say, goals as an individual versus the goals as a team versus the goals as a company. So we're kind of starting to peel back those different layers of why, again, it's such a massive topic to speak about, and like, where do you start, and how do we set goals, and for who, and why, and where, how, all of those questions start to come in, and it becomes more layered and more nuanced. And also, I think, hints at that some goals are not equal to others, that some can have great effects, good well-being feelings, and others may not set us up for success in the same way that we're thinking of, or might lead to more unhealthy behaviors. I used the word control earlier, and that can definitely be part of this. If there's an addiction to that dopamine hit, we can often set ourselves up for failure in the goals that we set ourselves, for example.
Now, I guess like another question, that you didn't go into games leadership spaces going, what I'm going to do is help people with goal setting. Why was this a thing that you became interested in and started helping people with?
Yeah, I mean, so I have my company is called Games Leadership, and my passion and my obsession is around all topics to do with leadership, of which goal setting is kind of an offshoot of that. And it goes hand in hand with things like change management and power dynamics. These are all kind of things that line up and form that under that umbrella of leadership in the games industry. And I think when I think about the games industry and the challenges that leadership faces in creating a game, then it becomes so much more, again, that layer of like, how do we set ourselves up for success? And I think, people don't come to me and go, how do I get better at goal setting? People come to me and go, how do I make this game? How do I be a better leader? How do I make more impact? How do I inspire people around me to follow me into, this crazy dev cycle that's about to begin and maybe take us 3 to 5 years of our lives? And I need to motivate other people to join me in that, and somehow stick with me so that we can get this out. Maybe I need to then also raise funds. I've got to figure out how this works and keep the business running and people paid on time and all of these things. And ultimately that leads back to, how do we set ourselves up for success? And I think that's the question that people come to me with, not how do I get better at setting goals.
Is it then, like, if you were to diagnose this, is it more that people are picking insufficient goals or wrong goals? Do you see both? Like, how would you describe it? That again, that you brought this back and said, like, hang on, I don't think you're doing a good job of setting goals here.
I've always reticent to be like, that's a bad goal, but I do hear some bad goals. I think as humans we are just bad at setting goals in general. We often choose to punish ourselves over kind of setting ourselves up for success, so we'll pick, instead of like a little goal of like, I don't know, I'm going to make myself a cup of tea, I'll pick like, I need to be earning 100K a year. Like, why am I not doing that? And we'll beat ourselves up. Like, we find stuff to beat ourselves up about all the time. So often the goals that we pick, we go for something big. And I love that. Like, I find that very lovely. Like when I start to work with a client and they give me a massive goal, and usually in the games industry, it'll be like, I want to release a game. Great. Love that. How are you going to do it? And that's where it falls apart, because they've set themselves this massive goal. They don't know how they're going to do it, but they want to do it, but they're constantly feeling like a failure because they're not achieving anything that they feel or that looks like is working towards that goal. In fact, it feels like it's getting further and further away. We're inherently bad at setting ourselves goals as humans. I think there's lots of research on like the science of like happiness, that will tell you things like, we often pick things that aren't great kind of success factors or don't feel good or are maybe shifting goals. So like money is one of them. We often do that. We'll set ourselves a target and be like, well, I need this amount of money to be happy. If I had that amount of money to be happy, I would be the happiest person alive. And actually the science behind that shows that doesn't happen. They go to people that are on like 25K and they ask them how much they need to be happy. They'll come up and they'll say maybe just a bit more, like 35K. That would make me happier, just having that pay rise. So they go to the people at 35K and they say, how much you need to be happy? And again, they'll be like, well, probably about 50K. And they go to the 50K and then it starts to jump a bit more and they'll go like, well, 100K would be great. So they go to the people with 100K and they're earning, and they ask them, well, you must be the happiest person alive, because everybody else that we've asked so far has come in well under. So 100K earners must be so happy. And that's not the case. The 100K earners, suddenly after 100K, I think this is in dollars, the number then jumped to, I need 250,000 a year in order to be happy, which kind of tells us that, number one, money is a terrible goal to set for ourselves. But also, number two, that there's different, different quality goals. There's different aspects of goal setting that can shift and change. And I often see this when I work with clients as well. That what they thought they wanted is no longer what they want. So I might come in wanting a certain thing, or thinking at least that that's what I want. And the answer is that when we work together and we start to explore some of the reasons why that's important to them, their feelings about that goal change. And then they're left with kind of a lack of motivation to then want to achieve it. I set myself, I do 100 at the start of the year in the front of my diary, and I list out like 100 things that I want to do this year. And often I do it on like 1st of January, and then I don't look at it until next January. And there's a couple of things that happened when I started to do this, and I've done it for about 8 years now. The first thing is that I am shocked by what I thought I wanted a year ago. You know, like sometimes the future me or the current me is disappointed with what past me set for herself. I'll be like, that was so easy. You know, it'll be like, have a picnic in the park, and I'm like, what a loser. And I achieved it. You know, I did it like 10 times in the year. And I'll be like, why did she want that? Like, that's such a weird thing that I would have set myself, but I've forgotten that I'd set myself that goal. And then the other side of it, going back, is I'm amazed at how much of them I've actually achieved. And some of them are wild. Like, some of them I set for myself are just like, I'll put them in and laugh and be like, that's such a silly goal that I would never thought I would achieve. And I have surprised myself that following year and gone, oh, I did that. Like, I actually did that. That was something that I sat on a BAFTA jury, for example. That was a big part of my career. I spoke at GDC. That's a career kind of tick box that I never thought was possible. And then I achieved it. So I'm not sure where I'm going with this. I'm trying to give you the kind of the flavor of goal setting is complicated.
And one thing you said, and I think this comes into, you go into a studio, they don't say, hi, I need help with goals. They say, I think I know the goal. My goal is to ship a game. Can you help me ship a game? Or obviously they don't say, I think I know what my goal is. They just say, can you help me ship a game?
Right.
And you say, yeah, probably. But
what game? What game are we making?
what does that mean? And it's almost that I had a phrase I used in a training I did once, and it was trying to differentiate like vision and strategy. And it said like vision without strategy is hopeless, and strategy without vision is pointless. And like, so you should have that goal, but you also need these little goals. You need these like, okay, cool. If you want to make this thing happen, this big goal happen, you want to ship the game, then I'll give as a business owner, then you need to make sure taxes are taken care of for your company. Yes. Right. I just to use the most annoying one. And there's some people when they go, wait a minute, I have to take care of taxes. Can't the CPA do that? Like, well, the CPA, if you've never done this, the CPA, the tax professional, they can do some of it, but you have to work with them, and you have to assemble documents, and you have to send them a bunch of information. You have to give them access. Like, it's a huge thing. And there's some people that might immediately go, I don't know if I want to make a game anymore if it means I have to mess with taxes. Like, I like just being able to plug all my stuff into TurboTax or whatever, and then just auto run on April 14th, and good to go. And that again, I'm using that as sort of a farcical example, but I don't doubt that there's someone out there that had the big goal of make a game and then was exposed to what it would mean to assemble a studio. Right. Oh, I mean, I need to manage people. Oh, I need to hire people. Oh, I need to like figure out how to market this. Oh, I need to talk to publishers. Oh, I need to try to find funding. Oh, I need to do my taxes. Oh, I need to like set up the business as a legal entity in whatever country, state, province, region I'm in the world. Like, and it's like, ugh, I don't want to do any of that. It's like, okay, right? Like, then you have to adjust your goal potentially.
Right, but all of those things can be part of that end goal. It's not that it's not that the goal is bad. We are shipping games. People are doing that. That is a thing that we can achieve. It's just that when we go in with those big heady goals, there's very little in there that feels good in the short term. Right. It has to take into consideration all of those things that come into it. A lot of what I'm teaching when I look at goal setting is like, how do we get those small wins, because that your motivation to achieve that big goal of shipping a game has to feel like you're winning enough in order to keep you on that path and follow through. So a lot of the techniques that I look at is like, well, how do we chunk that up? And we do this anyway, like, you know, if the goal is to make a game, production comes in, and you'll know this, you know, they
Right.
chunk it up into like,
We
this is
start
pre-production.
planning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We love this. This is the best bit, is the planning bit.
Milestones, roadmap, yay.
So we've already done that for the game making process. But what we haven't done is look outside of that. And I go on about this, you know, one of the biggest challenges I think that games leaders face is this kind of pressure of like the studio versus making a game. Because when we say I want to make a game, we also often have to make a game studio. And you're right in that, you know, there's a huge amount of friction between, sometimes those move beautifully together and they are the same goal, and sometimes they are fighting, you know. And I often I'm operations, so I often come up against producers. You know, you and I would have a fight over the production values, because it's like the producer's role is often to make the game, make the best game they can with the resources that they've got, and they want to do it really well, versus say an operations director or a COO, where it's like, well, I've got to keep this studio paid and people fed, and, you know, actually I'm not only looking at this game, but I'm actually looking at the next game that's coming, and like, how do we keep the lights on after we've shipped, and that weird kind of space of after you've shipped the game and there's no money coming in, because, you know, it takes time to see that return. How do we budget for, how do we keep the lights on in that space? And so that would be a good example of, like, you know, the goal is to ship the game, but often where the studio and making the game kind of creates friction, that there needs to be, I guess, separate goals sometimes emerge from those, or separate priorities. So it's more complicated.
Does this sound familiar? You're in a leadership role at a game studio. Everyone is busy working, no one has any time, but the actual game itself isn't in a good spot. Maybe it's the tech, maybe it's the lack of a validated prototype, maybe it's that every person seems to have a different idea about what we're trying to build. But you've got a job. There are reports to send, meetings to schedule and facilitate, the occasional season of performance reviews to go through. And everyone is always so busy. When you step back, it makes you wonder if everyone is just going to keep slowly walking towards the abyss until the project or game fails. Is this what it means to be a leader in games? In tech? To endlessly repeat the same sequence of meetings without really moving the needle? To spend hours trying to get Jira tickets and dashboards where they should be? To pretend that everything is fine when you know deep down it really isn't? It doesn't have to be this way. You can make a difference. You can help your team and game succeed, but sometimes you need a bit of help to get there. I've started a game dev leadership accelerator. It aims to level up leaders who see opportunities to make a difference but don't know how to capitalize on them. We'll walk through what it means to lead well and give you tools to understand your organization's challenges and implement changes to overcome them. Game dev is hard. Knowing how to lead will give you an edge. It will still be hard, but you'll be ready to tackle it. If you're interested, let me know below, hit the link. I hope to see you in the accelerator, because I believe better leaders will help teams make better games, and I look forward to someday playing what you create.
Well, and I think that also points to, as I look at different time horizons, it's easy to think shipping the game is the longest time horizon. But as you just pointed out, if I'm the operations director or the COO, no, it's not.
No.
Because now I've got a studio. I mean, unless if we hired everybody and literally told them, once we ship the game, we're all shutting down and we're all going to go find different jobs, which is
Right.
usually not something that people are doing. There's this idea of, I have to think about the sustainability of the studio long term, and so there's decisions I'm making around that. So there's a long time horizon, which might be shipping the game. There's a very long time horizon, which is like, what does the studio do after the game is shipped, and how are we making sure that we don't ship the game and then everybody's sitting on their hands, that we're actually ready to do whatever we assumed would come next, whether that was live support or patches or, like, you know, DLCs or, you know, a new game. Like, there's a bunch of different options out there. And then you also have this set of, like, we can come back from the long goal into, like, what are the midterm goals and what are the short-term goals? And there, it's almost like this huge web, because every different discipline or person really has different short, medium-term goals.
Agreed.
And you're trying you're trying to keep them all lined up to like ship the game and sustain the studio as your long and very long-term goals. Like but now when we get to like my day-to-day as a producer on a team that contains artists or engineers or narrative or design or whatever, my day-to-day goals look very different from theirs.
Right. Yes.
You
Yes.
know,
If
like,
you
oh,
if you same if you like hire me as a contractor, if I'm a contracted artist that's only here for 3 months, my goal actually isn't to ship the game. My
Yeah.
goal is to do this work for 3 months and then move on. And it becomes a bit more mercenary. And again, nothing wrong with that. That's just it's that now we've got people in the team whose goal isn't actually aligned with that goal. It's a completely different goal. Yes, it's part of it, but we now have different priorities taking place, and often we miss that, and this is why goal setting is so complicated.
Yeah. Well, and so again, you talked about this idea of there's when you're helping people do this, there's almost an expansion of what the goal is. You're
Right.
bringing me in to help ship the game. Yes, and you're also bringing me in so I can help you build a studio that can ship a game. So let's
Right.
first just expand the goal to capture that. And then let's also acknowledge that big goal is going to morph and shift, and it might sometimes be getting further away or coming in. But actually what we need right now are nearer term goals that keep people moving in a good direction. But just to make sure that this doesn't in any way become less complex than it is, also you can't just focus on all the short-term goals. You can't just be like, let's just stack 1 million short-term goals and that'll keep us all happy day to day, right? Because every day, look, I did something in it, and that was what a goal I had. And like, it has to still feed into like it. That's actually a corporate anti-pattern. Is everybody has very clear, distinct, well-defined OKRs or goals, and they all do them, and so they seem like they're doing a good job, and they're like, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and it's not actually leading to anything because they lost the big goal.
Right. Yeah.
So you can like trip in that direction, and I think larger companies are more prone to that because they've existed for so long. Anyway, so like, yes, you got this whole mess, right? How do you go about untangling this? So you show up, they say, I want you to help me ship a game. You say, cool, let's talk about the goals that you have. Let me help you with goals. Like, how do you actually go about doing this?
So the first question I ask is normally the same for everybody, and it is, why is it important for you? What's important for you to ship this game? Why? And let me understand that part. Because if we can start to talk about that and we understand why, often I go back to like, we're often bad at setting ourselves goals, because we are setting ourselves up for failure. That often we get into this loop of like, I'll set myself up for failure so I can beat myself up about it. So we have to understand what's motivating us to achieve those big goals in the first place. So my first question is always, tell me why that's important to you.
What do you tend to hear?
So that is totally different to everybody. It's really interesting. Everyone goes, I want to ship a game. I want a game. That's where we go back to like, success looks different for everyone. Everyone's success measure is different. Is it money? Is it fame? Is it impact? Is it, I don't know, the dream, the childhood dream? Is it in impressing a parent? Is it impressing ourselves? Is it sticking it to the boss that told us we would never be anything? It's so much more complicated where you start to like, why is this important to me? What is it that I'm trying to achieve? That's when we start to talk about, the ins and the outs as to how do we achieve this goal, and do we actually want it? Because that's where we have that conversation of, well, do you need to build a studio? What does that look like? Are you going to solo dev it? Have you got a team? Have you got a publisher? Have you thought about how you're going to fundraise? Have we thought about what sort of studio you want to lead? Is it physical? Is it remote? What's the sort of culture that you want from that? What sort of leader are you? What sort of leader do you want to be? What do you want people to say about you? That's where we start to open that nuance of the goal. And that's where it gets exciting. That's, for me, where we start to tease apart those different threads. And then when we understand that, we can start to hone in on what's going to feel good, and how do we start to build a plan that actually aligns with that person authentically. And that's the big thing for me. You know, the whole reason I set up Games Leadership is about, I want more authentic leaders. I want people to lead and feel themselves. It's not just about putting on a mask and pretending to be the lead, which is what I see so much in the games industry, of people being pressured to conform or be part of that traditional leadership structure. And the answer is that, you know, the games industry needs lots of different types of leaders. It needs the introverts, it needs the quiet leaders, it needs the loud leaders, and there should be choice so that people can choose and go and work for those studios that also align with their values and personality. And so I think it's important for me, you know, that we have leaders that are starting that journey feeling authentic to themselves, that are able to identify why they want something. And then the next stage of that, which is part of what I teach at Games Leadership with the blueprint, is how do I then communicate that to my team? So it comes in levels. So you have to start with, what do you want? Why do you want it? How are we going to go about doing that? How do we communicate that? That's kind of like the ultimate level. How do I communicate that in a way that then feels authentic to myself, and I don't lie awake at night staring at the ceiling, replaying what I've just said or asked for and feeling awful about it? Because leadership's weird like that, right? It puts you in those positions of power where you then have to have these conversations, and that's super weird. And it all starts back with, like, often, how many times have we found ourselves in a situation where we're like, why am I here? How did I get here? And often it's connected to your goal setting. Sorry. You want to do, you set yourself up to have that conversation, you know. I'm talking about like career things, you know, the amount of times I'm getting on stage at GDC, I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Why am I here? And then I just, you know, go back to, like, I don't know, 2 years previous, where she's writing in her journal being like, I want to talk at GDC because I wanted to do this. So, but, you know, I've got myself here, but now what do I do next? How do I make that feel good, I guess?
Yeah. So as you were going through that, I guess we start with the goal. We understand the why behind the goal. Do you have anybody just out there, or people just realize, like, oh my gosh, never mind, I don't actually want to do this?
Yes.
That's really cool.
Yes. But then that opens up so many other possibilities. Like, if we can say what we don't want, we can often communicate what we do want after that. So that's something that I often do as an exercise. You know, I'll write down everything I don't want, and then I'll go through that and be like, well, what do I want? And that gives me a bit more clarity in that space. So yeah, I think that's still helpful. You know, if we look at, say, coaching as a tool to help people move forwards from feeling stuck, or move forwards in their leadership, coaching is all about, like, you hold the answer in yourself, and I just ask the questions, and we find, you know, what feels good for you. But coaching is, as a tool, when it's used right, is exactly for that purpose of, like, well, let's figure out what you want. Let's find, and sometimes that looks like going through all the things you don't want first, and then picking apart why that is, so that we can then move on with what you do.
So we start with the what. We ask, why is that important? Some people actually go, well, that was very clarifying, and they no longer want that goal. Maybe I want a different goal, or maybe I want to do it in a different way, or whatever it might be. For some people, they go, no, okay, cool. Now I know why I want to do it, and now I can think about how I might do it, and now I need to communicate that to the people I'm going to be doing it with.
Yes.
And I love that you talked about that, because that step of getting to the point where, great, how many times have leaders, maybe you, maybe me, maybe someone out there listening, has known the goal in their own head, has attempted to communicate said goal in some way to a group of people, and then it just did not go. that way. Like that we did not move towards the goal. And in fact, when, wait a minute, isn't the goal this? People were like, what are you talking about? And it's like, no, that's what I said, wasn't it? I thought I said I wrote the email, or gave the presentation, or I talked in stand-up or planning or whatever. Like I said, this is what we're trying to, and people were like, I don't know what you're talking about. This is why I was doing that. And you're like, why? No, that's not, and you can get into this whole mess. But this idea of, okay, I need to understand the goal. I need to understand the motivation for the goal. I need to understand how I might go about that. And then I need to communicate that. So that we can, to your point around humans being collaborative, and by like we're social creatures, how do we use that as a way to bring other people along?
Often when we get to this topic, what comes out is, and I do think this is often quite a Western cultural thing. It's definitely a cultural thing in terms of how do we ask for things? And often there's a blocker there of like, I feel really uncomfortable. We're quite bad. Definitely in the UK, one of our biggest kind of turn-offs is actually saying what we want. We're very polite. That's kind of drilled in as a culture for us, as in like, you don't just come out and say, well, hey, I want this. And I think we are seeing a movement. I don't know, at least my Instagram is filled with videos of people being like, you want a job raise? This is how you do it. And like, we're starting to see that come through. But I think often vocalizing, there's a whole generation of us that like vocalizing what we actually want feels gross or icky or selfish or wrong. And that's a whole other space to like deal with, of like, we'll carry the baggage as to why ever asking for something feels bad to us. I also think, like you mentioned, like the creative director getting frustrated because like I've explained to you how it is and you've not built it. I think that is just a classic kind of games trope in general of like, I don't think there's any creative director out there that won't have like experienced this. There are a lot of the creative direction role is like, I wanted to make this thing. I'm now watching a bunch of people make the thing that I wanted to make, but not in the way that I imagined that it would be. And it's kind of the job. Like, even when you're good at explaining what you want, like some of that is like, I would call it like there's a grieving process that comes with being creative director of being like just accepting like, okay, that's not however I imagined it in my head. So I think that's part of it as well. But so we're inherently bad at it, so asking for what we want, and knowing what we want and being able to verbalize that. We're also, worried about saying what we want. There's a stigma attached to it, and being able to verbalize and vocalize that. And then also people have their own motivations and priorities. So there's a bit of letting go, I think, involved in and acceptance in coming to terms with, when we ask for something, people can then interpret that in their own way, and their own goals and priorities can come in and shift that. And so what we end up with is kind of moving something in a general direction, and I guess embracing what that looks like as a whole. So that's where we have those big collaborative team goals. And I guess the issue there again goes back to control. We often see, for example, in a sort of games leadership setting, is that leader that tries to control everything. Like, I want this, and therefore nothing will be satisfied. I have to have exactly what I imagined in my head. It has to go exactly. I need all of you to prioritize this. And that's when we start to see things going wrong, or those sort of more toxic work environments, or that kind of misunderstanding that comes, or the disappointment. That's a big one, I think, in the games industry. These feelings of like disappointment, of like, that's not what I wanted, or that's not, and then we have to have that conversation.
Right. We had to cut scope so we could stay under budget and on time.
Right. Yes.
And what we end up looking at is not as exciting as the thing we were all hoping to have, even if the thing we were all hoping to have is slightly different in each person's head.
Right.
Hey, leaders and game devs, if you love what we do here at Building Better Games, imagine what we could create with your support. By joining our Patreon, you help us bring deeper insights, develop better training, and host more expert discussions to level up your leadership and game development skills. Plus, as a patron, you're going to get exclusive behind-the-scenes content, early access to episodes, and a chance to ask your burning questions directly to us. Join now and help us build better games together.
So a couple things here then when you're talking about goal setting, there's like a few other elements that are coming into this. And one is this idea of understand the motivations behind the goal, and being able to then ask for others to help you with that goal, to target that goal. There is how do I describe it? There's an iterative nature as well to the idea of the goal setting. So like I have a goal, the goal tries to get everybody on the same page, but I recognize, which is it's so spot on what you said about creative directors, the best ones know that they're going to go set that goal and then they're going to get something different. And they're not, and if you're an inexperienced creative director, you say, no, that's not it, do it like this instead. And if you're the experienced director, you say like, good, like this part of that is really good. I want to shift this part of that. So because I was actually thinking more like this, and like that's where we're trying to go. And you sort of yes and rather than like no and
explain to me why this I want to understand your process as to how you got there is a much more
and that
way.
And that puts it in like I've got goal, I've got the bringing everybody on the same page, the recognition that we're going to be slightly different, and then the iteration, the like small loops, and these are almost the small goals. Okay, do something small, and now somebody there who's a leader is probably going, does that small goal line up to the big one? Let's check that. Okay, cool. Now let's try something else. Does that small goal line up to the big one? And so all of these things come into this idea of goal setting. It's not just, hey, when I help a team goal set, my job is to help them come up with the perfect 2-sentence phrase that captures what they're trying to do. And then I walk away and I say like, you have a perfect goal, go forward and conquer. Like that's not goal setting. Goal setting is an ongoing iterative process that has all these connected elements.
100%. So when I teach goal setting, I also teach the tools of like what happens when it's gone off track, what happens when I don't want the thing I thought I wanted, what happens when I've lost the motivation to continue, because again, you don't get enough of those small wins, things start to feel impossible very fast, and we see that with team morale. One of the curses, I guess, that we've created in the games industry is with the publisher relationship is the milestone. You have to pass the milestone. Often that's attached, it's so much more than a milestone, it's often attached to a monetary payment. It matters so much more than just being like, I did my work and the game looks like I expected it to at this stage. There's often much higher levels of risk attached to it. So it's not just achieving, it's how do we, how do we do that? I don't know, in a way that fulfills us.
And there was a good friend of mine who's he's done a decent amount of production direction, and he recalls one of the first times he was in that environment where he was responsible for the milestone, which got the next round of funding or the next, approval or the ability. And he said what was fascinating is looking back, the milestone became the goal rather than a great game.
Right.
And so he went through with that team hitting every milestone, but not creating the game.
Yeah.
And looking back at it, it was just an interesting observation for him. Everything seemed to be incentivizing him to just get through that next milestone. It doesn't matter how, hack and slash and do whatever you need to do. As long as we get to the next milestone, then we can get to the next milestone. And it was almost like, and by the way, to your point around risk, potentially these milestones were keeping all these people employed. So it makes it like this hits on a survival thing. It's like, well, do you want to ship a great game? Of course I do. Cool. Do you want to stay employed? Yes.
So the goal changes, right? At that stage, the goal is like, how do we survive?
Yes.
I see lots of studios in survival mode, and that's when some of the wildest decisions are made. Is when they're, you start off with this plan. Now it doesn't look like what I wanted. But actually the priority has shifted, and we have to just ship something, or we have to pass this milestone,
Right.
exactly like you said. And that's when you're going into that survival mode, and that's when we see some of kind of the worst decisions being made.
I think an extreme example of this was, let's go back 4 years when and I know there's still people that say this, but it hasn't happened. Sorry, everybody. When Web3 was the thing, and there were studios that had a game and they needed a next round of funding, and like that was their milestone, was I need a bridge round, or I need to go to my Series B or my Series C or whatever. And suddenly they'd just be like, well, let's just throw blockchain and Web3 into our pitch deck and see, and like we'll figure out a way to integrate that. And people are like, wait a minute, that doesn't work with the game we're making. It's like, it doesn't matter. That's how you get funding. And again, there's this contrast between the goal of the game we were trying to make and the survival. It's like, maybe this will help us survive. And it's easy to critique that and say, no, why would you do that? That's silly. And simultaneously you're going, because you were trying to survive. I think it's easy to say that's always the wrong move. I think the reality on the ground is much more nuanced and difficult.
There's no shame in surviving. That's something we've definitely seen in the last 2 years. Is like, there is no shame. Whatever studios have had to do to keep going and keeping people employed, there's been decisions that have to be made in that moment. And the ideal situation is obviously that we'd have lots of time to discuss it and think about the pros and cons. And sometimes that's one of the risks of leadership, right? Is that you have to make a decision there and then. But like I said, no shame in survival. But it does change, or it impacts the end goal. And I guess that's where the goal is changing, and that's where that chance for iteration comes into place. Because if we're still trying to achieve the end goal with the plan that was previous and we haven't adapted, it's always going to feel unsatisfactory.
What would be your closing thoughts around this not so simple, very complex, multifaceted conversation around goal setting?
That it's better to throw 100 crazy goals out there and achieve like 4 of them than it is to hope for one thing. I think it's about adapting and flexing, celebrating those small wins. I celebrated that I went and had a picnic in the park, because Pasmi definitely needed that. Bless her. Whatever motivated her to put that on, she needed that. So I think there's 2 things, isn't there? There's celebrate the small wins, find those small wins, because those are the things that are going to motivate you. There's a need to feel fulfilled in what we're doing, and often a joy in finding what those small wins are. One of the kind of things that people use for like when they're recovering from, say, depression, is that the goals get really small. So what does achieving look like in that space? It looks like getting up in the morning. It looks like taking a shower, getting dressed, having some breakfast, having a cup of tea. And it's interesting, whenever I feel out of control, I go back to those smaller goals. I go and have a cup of tea in the garden, and I sit and just have 20 minutes space to myself. And that's my goal for the day. And sometimes you get days like that when you need it. So celebrate the small wins. But also,
find the goal that's appropriate to your circumstance and mental state.
Yes. Find things to celebrate. I mean, more joy in general is always good. But yeah, celebrate the small wins, because those are the things that are going to feed you. But also put out those big, crazy goals as well. And get real honest with yourself as to what you actually want. Don't be afraid to put out that massive goal. But I guess if there's something burning inside, it's worth exploring and prodding that as to like, why is that important? And then we can start to unpack it. Then we can start to see, like, you know, am I wanting this for healthy reasons? Is this going to sustain me and feed me and fulfill me? Or can I start to see where, you know, some of this is not healthy for me, or whether this goal is something that is going to be good for me, and can I start to unpack it? It has to come out of that dream state, I guess. You know, goals are about action. I guess that's my parting comment. Goals are about action. So let's choose things that are actionable for us.
Cool. Love it. Okay. Where should people go to find out more about you? Anywhere you want to send people?
Yeah, so we are currently open for people to join the Games Leadership Blueprint. That is a 12-week leadership course, all focused on getting the leader into a good place so that they can start to communicate their wants and needs more authentically to their team. You can find us at www.gamesleadership.com.
Awesome. We'll put those things down in the show notes. Melissa, this has been a fun one. Thank you.
Always
Yeah.
pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Enjoy it.
All right, just a quick recap of what we've talked about here. There were a lot of things that came out related to goals. So first, goals create motivation towards an end state. If you don't know your goals, it is harder to be motivated or to understand your motivation. But goals aren't the same as success. What is success is a related but different question than what are my goals? And it can be helpful to keep those differentiated. Second, goals help humans collaborate and survive. But with many of the basic goals much more easily achievable in the modern world, we end up targeting different goals, and they are perhaps less intuitive to us. Third, money is not a good goal on its own. The goalposts seem to never stop moving for money. No matter how much you make, you want more. Fourth, it is satisfying to accomplish goals, even small ones. It can help life become more meaningful. Fifth, we often set giant, nearly impossible goals, and that becomes a way for us to beat ourselves up for failure. Targeting some big goals, but also a lot of local, smaller goals, can prevent you from moving towards despair as you try to grind your way towards something very difficult. Sixth, something to try. Take some time to set a whole bunch of goals for yourself. Some could be huge, some small, but have a wide variety, and don't freak out about it if you achieve them all, or not, but instead enjoy it when you reach one. This might help retrain you a little bit to have a better relationship with goals. Seventh, non-goal related easy dopamine can hurt your ability to move towards goals in order to get dopamine from that. But we live in a society where dopamine triggering distractions are everywhere. Be wary of how they are affecting you and your ability to become who you desire to be. Eighth, your goals will evolve over time. That's okay. Don't feel like just because you set something as a goal a while ago means that you're beholden to it forever. Ninth, goals are complex and multi-layered. The whole space is filled with nuance. When you dive into real goal setting, being honest with yourself and those around you will help a lot. If you can't talk about why you have the goals you have, it will be harder to understand yourself and explain why your goals matter to others. 10th, aligning goals for a group of people is powerful but also difficult. Don't expect to get it right on the first try, but also I recommend continuing to try. Clarity of collective goals is really, really valuable. All right. Thanks for listening to this episode. See you next time.